Welcome to this episode of Kernels, an ongoing series of short videos from the State Library of Iowa. Each installment is a small pop of professional development that gets right to the core of a library program, service, or library methodology applied in a public library setting. Kernels feature in-practice librarians discussing their work so that other in-practice librarians can learn from their experiences. My name is Maryann Mori, and I'm District Consultant with the State Library of Iowa. Today, we are going to talk about theater camp at your local public library. It's a program that our presenter says you can do and who will explain the hows and whys of it. With me is Cathy Van Maanen, Director of Huxley Public Library located in Story County, Iowa. Cathy, you've previously mentioned to me some of your activities with theater camp, but we recently had opportunity to chat a little more about it, and we both said, hey, we need to share this information with other librarians. We need to do a Kernel episode about this. You make theater camp sound and look so easy. So we're going to count on you to help our audience learn how they can do a theater camp at their library. But before we get into the meat of this idea, I just want to stress that Huxley Library is not a huge library. And while you are a D-sized library, your physical library does not have a big community room or large space. And Cathy, remind me, how many employees do you have at your library?
6 part-time. I'm the only full-time employee. Our
Right.
program director is considered 3/4 and then 5 part-time staff.
So not a huge staff that you're
No.
doing this. So tell us, first of all, what is theater camp and what is it not?
Well, that's why I stress that it is not another sports camp. In most small Iowa communities, I think is a lot of emphasis on sports, and there's a soccer camp and a baseball camp and a football camp and lots of opportunities for kids in those areas. So for me to have a theater camp, I think introduces something entirely different and reaches an entirely different group of kids that are really looking for a different outlet. They're imaginative, they're creative, they like literature. So this is something that they can do and they get excited about.
And how long does theater camp last?
We do it in a week. So our weeks typically are spring break and then a week at the end of summer reading. We've done 7 now in the
So you
last
do this
2 years.
twice a year then?
We do it twice a year.
Wow.
It's Monday through Friday. I have the kids for 3.5 hours a day. So they come in Monday morning cold, a group of 15 to 20 kids. I have a script chosen. We will read through that first day. They will go through an audition process, and I'll talk through that a little more specifically later. But then on Friday afternoon, we perform a play, fully
Wow.
memorized with very simple costumes and props and sets, but they put the whole thing together in that week's time.
And how old are the kids?
3rd through 8th grade. And
Okay.
typically I get a lot of 5th and 6th graders. I'll say it lands heavy on that age group.
Okay. So I guess a lot of people are going, oh my goodness, this sounds amazing, but why do you undertake this? It sounds like a huge project. Why do you do this, and why should other librarians consider doing it?
Well, I do it because I have a passion for children's theater. I really believe in it. It's a huge part of my background in education. So it's very fun for me. But I think it does, again, introduce a unique opportunity to the kids. I truly believe this is lifelong skill building. If you talk to so many adults, I think the statistics say 75% of adults are afraid of public speaking. So my firm belief is we start with kids and get them comfortable in front of an audience. They will not have that fear as an adult. And that is a skill that is vitally important in a lot of jobs and a lot of interpersonal communication skills. So I really do think this is more than a week of fun. This is helping build a lifelong skill. I think it helps them develop a deeper understanding of the arts. They see a high school play, but then maybe they want to go to the Des Moines Playhouse, or they get the opportunity to see something at the Civic Center. When you've done even just this little bit of work on a simple play, you understand in a deeper way what's going on in that larger production. And it's teamwork. It's no different than being on the basketball team or the football team. If you are in a cast of characters, you have to work together and learn how
Right.
to feed off each other, help each other. And it also develops an interest in, well, what else could I do with this? If they wanted to take it farther, and they could get involved with larger theater camps at the Playhouse in Des Moines, Story Theater Company in Ames that do a lot bigger productions with a lot more people and a lot more professionalism, shall we say. And it can lead them into high school drama and high school speech contest. I've judged for IHSSA, the Iowa High School Speech Association, for several years. And this is just a good beginning of introducing those opportunities to younger kids.
Great.
So I think that's why you should do it too.
So let's talk a little bit more about the how. How do you do a week-long camp with a group of kids who we were talking earlier, they've got the hormones going, they've got the adrenaline going, they're hyped, they're energetic. How do you corral them, get them to learn a play in a week's time with the props and the costumes and do a successful program? So tell us the how.
I think you have to have a very, very set schedule. You have to go into it ultra prepared as the leader of this. So have a schedule set on paper with everything we're going to do each day, and over schedule. And then maybe asterisk the things that can be let go, because you have to have the kids busy all the time. So that's important in keeping them going. This is my very well-worn book that I have a picture of there, and all the pages, I have so many sticky notes in here and so many pages highlighted. This is just an excellent resource. And I would encourage you to get that. There's a second edition of this book available on Amazon, and it will take you through step by step putting something like this together. And it talks more about maybe a full 2-act play over time, but you can take that same information and condense it down. And so that's, if you're unfamiliar with doing anything with children's theater, I highly recommend this book or something very similar to it. And I put the table of contents up there just so that you can see developing skills, choosing the show, first things, staging and blocking, things you might be unfamiliar with. Going through this book will make it very easy and can give you a step-by-step guide.
Great. So let's talk a little bit more about the plays. How do you choose a play? Where do you get your resources?
I was super excited finding this particular publisher, Playing with Plays. These are 4 of the shows that we have done. And so I've just bought these scripts off of Amazon, and it breaks it down into 3 different sections. So you could do a play with 6 kids, you could do a play with 10 kids, you can do a play with 20 kids, and you don't have to, they've done all the work for you. So they've established that cast size and the roles. So this particular one is a great resource. You can see there's Alice's Adventures in Wonderland for 7 to 12, 10 to 16, 13 to 21. When I've done it, I've always had the bigger group. So I've used that section, but it does make it very easy for you. If you've never adapted a script or tried to write a script, like I said, the work is done for you with these. I can't recommend them enough.
That's great. I like how it breaks it down dependent upon the number of actors that you have available. So if you're in a really small town and you have a dozen kids show up, you can still do a performance.
Yeah. And if you've never done it before, do the 15-minute show with 5 or 6 kids. Keep it simple for yourself.
Now, Cathy, one thing we didn't talk about, and I don't know that we have a slide about it. Let's say you're planning to do this 25-minute show with up to 21 actors or more, and you get 50 kids. Do you allow that many? Do you cut off a number, or surely not all of the kids are actors. Do you have stagehands and things like that they could still participate?
I do cut it off at the maximum number. So an example there with Alice, I would have cut it off at 21. The plus means that you're combining parts. So one kid would have more than one part. And then I let those kids with the small parts be the stagehands. They're changing the set or helping backstage with props.
Okay.
I will warn you that when you cast the show and somebody gets that part with 2 lines and you tell them they're going to help, they'll probably cry. But that's okay. They'll get over it.
Yeah, that's another life lesson, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So here's your publicity of how you promote it. You evidently have a name in your community, because
well,
we're going to do theater camp with Cathy. Oh, yes, we all know Cathy. She's a pro.
Well, I had taught the theater classes at our local dance studio for several years. So when I
Okay.
started it here, it kind of translated. I
Mm,
couldn't do it in the library when I was teaching there as a
okay.
conflict of interest.
Right.
So when I stepped away from the dance studio is when I started the camps at the library.
Okay. So that makes sense. And most of us would probably just say at the so-and-so public library.
Right. And that was a little uppity of me probably, but
No,
it was recognition for some people.
yeah, it shows you've got a good reputation. So this gives us an idea of what the time frame is, and you have the kids bring a sack lunch.
Yep.
It's Monday through Friday, and you do specify that the kids have to participate all 5 days. Do you ever get
Yes.
pushback on that?
Um, I've had people ask, well, they have a doctor's appointment or they'll be with grandma on Tuesday. And I just say, well, then it won't work.
Okay.
So I do really stick to that. And I think one time I had a kid miss because they were sick, which
Hmm.
obviously you have no control over that.
Right.
But otherwise, that 5 day attendance has worked very well. And
Okay.
I have to stick with it because it is such a short time frame. And back to the teamwork, if you only have 4 days to rehearse and somebody's gone, it really does affect everyone
Oh, of
else.
course. And I see you do charge something for
I
this.
do. When we first started it, it wasn't something that we had planned for ahead of time. So I felt like to cover the cost, it wasn't in my budget. But I have never had anyone bat an eye at paying $35 for their child to be involved in something for a week. And
Mhm.
that fully covered the price for those scripts, covered the price for any simple props that we went out and purchased. And then over time, of course, I built some things up that we can reuse.
Mhm.
So basically, I just set that initial fee to basically cover cost.
Okay. And it may be a library, if a library doesn't want to do that, they might be able to get their friends group to cover this cost, or maybe
Mhm.
a local business would be willing to help cover that, or some kind of scholarship fund could be
Yes.
established, I
I
imagine.
don't think it would be hard at all to find a business sponsor for something like this.
So you have some guides here in the
Mhm.
next few slides that show people basically what you do on your
Mhm.
days on this 5 day camp. Tell us a little bit about day one, which is
So
probably the most chaotic day, I'm guessing.
it is, and it can be. So this is just an example of the schedule that I put together for the first couple of days. So the kids come in, I have them do name tags. I have a group of tongue twisters or poems. One of the ones I really like to use is Runny Babbit from Shel Silverstein, because enunciation, projection, all those things are things that we work on and that are important. And it keeps them busy. And I always tell them you will be performing these later. So to get them started, they just have something to do. Some days it might be a coloring sheet that's just something to do with the show, but have something for them structured to do as they arrive. And this is my rule that I got from a theater workshop years ago, and I love it. And it's what I tell the kids throughout the week is take care. Take care of everyone involved in the camp. Take care of your cast members. Take care of your script, your props, your costumes. If they are yours, they're your responsibility. You take care of them. And in doing that, you're taking care of yourself. So everybody has a sense of responsibility to the group as well as the things they're individually using. And throughout the week, I can just look at the group if something's going off and say, hey, take care. And they have learned, especially the kids now that have done several of these with me, they'll redefine that rule to the other kids. And it's so simple, but it works.
Good.
I
And
have
oh,
pencils and highlighters for each kid. I always have all those supplies available to them every day, and I expect them to use them. So their script becomes their own. They can highlight their parts. They're expected to take notes of what they're doing. And I also tell them, you're here for 2.5 hours and you're going to have a half-hour break for lunch. So we're going to work for 2 hours. I expect you to work. And I start out with pretty high expectations and pretty high behavior standards, and they respond really well because
that's
we also
great.
have a lot of fun.
That's great. I see that you do make the kids memorize their parts. Have you
Oh,
had any
absolutely.
trouble with memorization? Because that's not
No,
typically something that students today have to drill to do.
right.
So how do
But
you
their
handle that?
mind their brains are little sponges and they memorize very easily. They can start out feeling a little overwhelmed with it. And I do have some tips for memorization, just highlighting the script helps. Read through it every day. Have somebody give you your cue lines and respond. Do it in the mirror. Record. If you have a phone, record yourself on your lines and then say them along with yourself. So they do get some tips like that, but honestly, they don't have any trouble. I've never had a kid not be able to memorize. And I've had a lot of different abilities, but they can do it. And they just need to be encouraged that they can do it. And
So
through those, oh, go ahead,
I
Maryann.
was going to say, I assume you assign the parts at day 1. So when they come back on day 2, no, not
No,
yet.
they have an audition. We sit down and read through the entire script, and we'll just go in a circle and read, no assigned parts. And then after lunch, we will go through an audition process where they can tell me what they would like to do. I give them 1, 2, 3 choices, and I will take that Monday afternoon and then assign the parts, and they won't know that until Tuesday morning.
Okay, so here's day 2. They come in and they find out what part they got or didn't get, and you deal with the
Exactly.
disappointments and then move on, right?
Yep. And then we will always do games throughout. The one there at the top, upstage, downstage, cheating front, set up duos and trios. It's just a way of having the kids learn what it's like to be on stage, how to project to an audience, what looks good in a theatrical setting versus reality. In reality, you would talk to people face to face, where in theater, you're going more shoulder to shoulder. So we go through things like that. A lot of breathing and projection exercises, which again, don't think you have to know everything. All that stuff can be taken right out of a book. Then we will do their character announcements. In some of those scripts, for example, Alice in Wonderland, Alice is by far the biggest part. So I have split that between 2 girls. So we have Act 1 and Act 2. So we have Act 1 Alice and Act 2 Alice. And that has balanced parts for the entire cast a little more. And the kids think it's great. They've had a
Makes
good
it
time
easier
with
to memorize too.
Right. Then they don't have 60 lines to memorize. They'll have 30.
Right.
Then we will
Okay.
sit down and do a table read, just in parts at this point. We'll have lunch. I have another game listed there. And then we will do our Tuesday afternoon, our first walkthrough of the entire script. And that's where that pencil in their hand and taking notes on their script is so important as we start to set blocking and give them specific directions. Because one of the things they have to learn is once we start, it has to be the same over and over, because again, the teamwork, if you all of a sudden change up what you're doing, where you're doing it, how you're saying it, this other person in the cast, you're just confusing them. So lots of note taking, lots of consistency.
Okay. And then days 3 and 4, more rehearsal, more games. And I see you decide on costumes. Do the kids have to provide their own costumes?
No, that comes in part of that $35 fee. And I really stress with the kids and with the parents, do not go out and spend more money on a costume. We keep this very simple. I may do some goodwill scrounging. I will ask patrons that I know, hey, do you have this or that in the closet? You can find things without spending a lot of money. When we did Little Women, just a patron in the library that I knew was heavily involved in 4-H with her daughters, and she's a seamstress, and she came up with this whole treasure trove of dresses for me, and then made some extra skirts. So I think it's a way to involve other people. That she's a widow. She was so delighted to have this project to help me out. You can always find those people, I think, in your community that will help and not have to spend a lot of money. And you'll see in some of the pictures later, we're very, very simple. We're there for a week. The main goals for me are the kids to do the memorization, learn how to play a part, and learn how to get along. The costumes and the scenes are important, but that becomes a little more to the side of what we're doing in that week.
Okay. And the last day, then dress rehearsal and performance.
Yep. On day 4, we make sure everybody has their props and costumes, and then they come in Friday morning and we run that full dress rehearsal. And at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, have our audience come in and they perform.
And Kathy, we mentioned earlier that your library doesn't have a big meeting room
Mm.
space. So where do you do all of these days of camp?
Yeah, I don't have the best space, but it works. Adjacent to our building is what we call the safe room, and it is a FEMA built room for there's a storm shelter. So basically, it's a big concrete room. It kind of sits between where we are in a multi-use city building and the police station. It's just part of this whole 515 North Main address. So we use that space. It's rented out for graduation parties and wedding receptions and all kinds of things, as well as being a storm shelter. So we're able to use that space. Acoustically, it's not great, but it does work for us. Now, last summer, it was being used by a local church for their Bible school. And in an effort to make both our lives simpler, we didn't want to have to both tear down and set up every day. So I did ask my own church locally if we could use that space, and it worked out great. And actually, I loved it because we actually had a stage and more of a backstage area. But any large space that you can get, I would contact your local churches. Do you have a park shelter that maybe you could set up in for the week, just to find that space?
Okay. We've got a few pictures here of some of your performances.
So
And I think we're just going to
this
kind
is
of
a fun picture. I have to explain the background. So this was the first one we did, was Treasure Island. So we have our pirates lined up here on the edge of the boat with Long John Silver. And not everybody's going to have a boat, but several decades ago, there was a restaurant in Huxley. And because of the Scandinavian heritage here, it was called the Fjord. And this Viking boat was actually the salad bar.
oh,
Not even kidding. But the Historical Society has had it in storage, and the storage happened to be adjacent in our building too. And I said, hey, can I pull that boat out and use it for Treasure Island? So we actually had a boat, and there were exercise mats on the front. So as pirates went overboard, the kids fell out of the boat and onto the mats, and that was pretty fun.
that's amazing. That's great, though.
So
Another
this,
partnership, right?
exactly. And this, you can see, this is where we are in the safe room. So there's a kitchen there, but under the clock, you can see the pull-up window there. And then the door behind Long John Silver, the room can be split in half. So we close that divider, and that becomes our backstage area on the other side of the room.
And you've got some pretty cool props.
Yeah.
Who makes all your props?
This was, again, one of the churches in town had these for a float one summer for Prairie Fest, our local summer festival, and they had them in storage, and kind of remembered them in the back of my mind. So, hey, could I borrow those? And sure, come borrow the palm trees.
So you're
we did.
probably on the lookout throughout the year at seeing at what other organizations are doing, like with this float, for example, and you mentioned about going thrifting and finding some things.
You
So,
just can't be afraid of asking to borrow.
right. And again, it's another partnership with this organization that already had these trees,
Yes.
which looks like
This
you
is,
used in
again,
Jungle Book. Yeah.
Jungle Book. Yep. And so you can see, with as far as costuming, I found these masks on Etsy. So was supporting someone with their small business on Etsy, as well as just making it a very simple costume choice for us.
Mhm.
So blue with the masks, all the monkeys with masks, and they just dressed in basic black or brown. But
Mhm.
with their actions, you know who the monkeys are, and Mowgli's down there in front in blue. And we were able to just define the characters very simply with this one. And again,
Yeah.
this is also Jungle Book. So Kaa the snake back there in her green mask.
Hmm.
This little boy right in the front is probably the
Oops.
cutest. He just happens to be my grandson. So
Oh,
that little
well,
monkey
we
might
have
have
to
been my
point him out.
favorite.
Okay.
This is Alice in Wonderland. The picture with the white rabbit and the Queen of Hearts is obviously in a rehearsal with her white shorts on. But the dress for the Queen of Hearts, this is maybe a little an unfair advantage on my part, but several years ago, I had directed a full production of Alice in Wonderland in Ames. So I just got a hold of that organization. Hey, do you still have those costumes? And they did, and I was able to reuse some of those costumes.
Mm.
And again, the way we set the stage was Wonderland is just bright and colorful and goofy. So we created some levels with step stools and tissue paper flowers. One of the characters in this particular script is the door. So the silver frame and flowers there, she was able to carry and be the door. and the tea party table in the background was brought up front. The black stool, folded black sheets on the front, the way we opened this show, the kids were holding the black sheets. It was 4 kids, 2 sheets, kind of masking Wonderland behind them. So Alice reading her book, the White Rabbit was peeking through the sheets. And then as she fell into Wonderland, those went to the side and disappeared, and we opened up on all the color and
Very
chaos
good.
of Wonderland.
Very simple, but effective, I'm sure.
Yes. This was Little Women. I love the death scene here. It's very dramatic. But it was just simple plastic backdrops that we had up on the wall. So it was just a garden backdrop, again, that I found on Amazon. That was behind them for the garden scenes. The house, it's just a cardboard fireplace that we've had here in the library for years. Gets out at Christmas time for some decoration, so we used that. This particular time, I did use a curtain frame that you'll see later, again, that we ordered off of Amazon, put the plastic room backdrop, and they were able to come and go behind the living room wall there for some exits and entrances.
I would think that some of your backdrops, like the garden one there, you could use that for photo ops for a summer reading program or some other event.
Yeah, you'll see the living room reappears in Mary Poppins.
Oh, yes, there it is.
And this is when we were in the church last summer. And this was just a simple division of the stage. We were either in London or we were in the house.
Mm-hmm.
And it just gave some definition to where we were. But again, very, very simple.
You had a video clip, which we can't show here for a variety of reasons, but it was interesting because this video clip of Mary Poppins, she has her satchel, which is only a certain size, but she's putting a large umbrella down inside it. And then in this picture taken off of the clip, she's pulling out a very large measuring stick so she can measure the kids. And that's just fun. Your little magic there, ways that you can do some special effects that really,
this is probably my absolute favorite. So it's just a box that a dad built and put some casters on the bottom, but there's a trap door in the top. So when the table's moved out on stage, it looks like a flat top table, but the purse, who was built or was put together by a seamstress friend of mine, has a false bottom. So when Mary Poppins sets her purse on top of the table, there's a little boy inside there that opens the trap door, pulls open the bottom of the bag, and Mary Poppins can put everything away, but she also pulls out the flowers, pulls out the measuring stick, pulls out books, giant things come out of her little purse. And that was really, really fun. And the first time we did it in rehearsal, just the kids watching it had so much fun with it. And again, it was not difficult to do. You find, and I would be happy to share some of those types of props and ideas with anybody, how we went about all of that. Again, and this is the one we just did last spring.
Yeah.
So we did a series of Aesop's fables, and that little peanut in the grapes, she was she was so fun. But that was the fox and the grapes, obviously, and the lion and the mouse. And again, that's rehearsal. Abby did not wear her Ballard sweatshirt for performance, but again, just investing in the masks and keeping those costumes pretty simple.
So here's some of your tricks of the trade, it looks like.
This was a fantastic purchase. We got this 2 curtains and the stands that they go on, and you can see it's $24 and something you can use in summer reading programs, something you might put up for another speaker, something you use for theater camp. It was a great investment. So we have 2 of the curtains, and then I think on the next slide shows the stand that they go on. Pal packs up in that small bag, storage is not a problem. And that was very helpful. So
it looks like for an initial investment, maybe $100.
Okay. And again, I think business partnerships, if you find somebody, and you will be amazed at how many people are thrilled that you're doing theater and speaking for kids, and that it's not another sports camp, because those kids are out there that need these opportunities. So you find that business owner that wants to back that. $100 for most of them is a pretty easy donation.
Okay. All right. So in summary, how can a librarian who doesn't know anything about theater, doesn't have a big budget or staff, how can they get started in theater camp at their library?
I'm always going to go back to my book. It's like, and there are other books, other resources, but do a little self-education, and then start small. Look at one of those scripts and get 7 to 10 kids that are interested, and don't start with 25 kids. You know, don't put yourself in that kind of anxiety or stress level. Just start small. I would encourage you to have a fee. Don't be afraid to charge. It's not a monstrous amount again. And if a family comes in and says, oh, I really want my kids to do this and I don't have $35, find a way to scholarship that kid and let them have the chance. But I think it's worthwhile and most people can pay for it. Invest in the basics, the stand, the curtains, some benches, just some very simple set pieces that can be modified to be a lot of different things. Invest in the kids, the time, and have fun with it. I think you can get a lot of help from your own community school district, the drama department there. As a speech coach, I see such talented kids every year involved in speech. If you're uncomfortable with it or haven't done it before, odds are you could get some high school students to help, and it would be a great experience for them as well. Use your resources, find a good book to follow, invest in those kids, and have fun. It is, I will tell you, on Friday afternoon when we finish that, I am exhausted, but it is so rewarding. Some of the instances that I've had with kids, I told Maryann there was one this summer that signed up that I thought, oh no, I know this kid, he has zero attention span. He's a handful. And I was very worried. And he came in that first day and he got so invested in the process and he had so much fun. And it was truly something different for him that he wanted to try and do. And it was a wonderful experience for him. And throughout the course of the week, what finally came out too was he said, where I go for a babysitter, I get picked on and nobody's picking on me here.
Oh, that's great.
I had another girl tell me at the end of the week, I always ask the kids, okay, what did you like? What didn't you like? What was good? What was bad? And a girl told me once, I felt safe all week. What a better opportunity for these kids.
Yeah.
Now, I've had the flip side as well. I had a boy, he'd been in at least 3 of the shows that we'd done together. And he decided that he knew a lot about the process and he was older and he was going to push most buttons that I had. And he's a leader personality. And so I just throughout that first afternoon or second afternoon saw them going towards him and we were headed down the wrong path. And I just pulled him aside and we had a good talk about it, what was going on and his ability to respect me and my authority and what I expected from him. And it ended and we had a great rest of the week.
So I imagine it sounds like you're being very proactive through this program in avoiding what could be difficulties with student behavior in the library otherwise.
Yes,
you that they are getting to know you, you're getting to know them. That's fantastic.
Yeah. And I truly think it's a positive experience for everybody. I've had wonderful comments from parents, just that it was maybe something different. It introduced them to a new thing. Talking about where will it take them next. One of the girls that did 2 shows with me is now very involved with Story Theater in Ames. She found out this was just something that she loves to do. And so it's very fun to watch them grow and blossom into that. I'm perfectly willing to be the starting point. I don't have to be the next step.
Bringing this back to library considerations, do you have copies of the books of the plays that you do? And if so, do you see an uptick in checkouts of those titles?
I have not ever put the scripts out for circulation.
No, I mean just like Alice in Wonderland, the book, or
yes,
the book, The Jungle Book. Do you have
Yes.
those books in your collection already? And do you see people checking them out as a result of doing the play?
Yes, we do. And we also have editions. It's a Townsend Publishing, if anyone's familiar with that. So if a kid doesn't want to have to dig into the original language, we have the abridged, updated language versions. And so a lot of times the kids will grab those. But then if they're really interested, they'll go back to the original as well. But I've definitely had families say, oh, we need to read this aloud before they do the show. Or the
Yeah, that
YouTube
that
program.
kind of I would think increases circulation of some of your classic titles like
Mhm.
Treasure Island, for example.
Yes, you are very right.
And one last question, what kind of attendance do you get as an audience?
Because we do it on Friday afternoon, it's a little restrictive. So it's mostly just the kids' families that come, but we have had up to 100 people.
Mm,
So when you think about your space, do keep that in mind. I literally, as we go to set up chairs, ask the kids, okay, how many people in your family? How many people are you inviting? And the first one will say 10. So, okay, we're going to set up the first 10 chairs. And that's kind of how we decide to set up, and then
okay.
with a few extra. But
Okay.
that
Wonderful.
if you have a big cast, you're going to have a big audience.
Of course. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Kathy. I have a feeling we're going to see a lot more theater camps at Iowa libraries.
Well, I would welcome any questions, and I would love to guide somebody more specifically through the process. I think it's very worthwhile.
Thank you. Thank you all for watching Kernels. All of our Kernels episodes are posted to the State Library of Iowa's Continuing Education YouTube channel. We have a whole playlist of them, so feel free to watch all of them. They're also cross-posted to Iowa Learns, our learning management system, so Iowa librarians can watch them there for CE credit. Just watch the video and complete the evaluation. Thank you again, Kathy. I appreciate your
Thank
time
you.
and your expertise.